So today we are going to be taking a look at a scenario where civilization starts over. In the last episode we saw the first episode of World War III, where a lot of events happened such as the death of Ukraine. There was a weird militia thing up here in Hungary. Colombia pretty much fully collapsed. And most importantly, at the end of the video, the red team joined the Square Alliance. This will be obviously a big thing for this war. So if you enjoy my videos, make sure to like and subscribe, and yeah, let's just get straight into it. Now with the red team joining this war, they're going to be able to get a lot more troops to Albania, which is definitely going to help out in this front line here. However, they haven't quite, made their impact yet. So we have the Romanians pushing back against Albania slightly over here, and starting a re-invasion into their kind of, the eastern areas. And Romania's going to do something that they haven't done yet in this war, and that's invade into Hungary, because, why not? It's basically free pickings at this point, and the Hungarians are in shambles, like they lost the capital city to this militia thing. But the militia thing will start to kind of creep back into Croatia, weirdly enough, and start to kind of abandon Hungary, so it's kind of like a nomadic militia, which is weird. We're actually going to be seeing a deal be signed between the red team and Caspia. And as a deal for the duration of this war, the red team will pay a lot of money to Caspia, basically for the access for this region of their coast for the rest, or the duration of this war, so they can kind of help out in this Ukrainian front line. Now, the red team will start to invade back into Ukraine, or the areas of Ukraine, by sea, and their impact, they're basically just going to not really invade the land yet, but what they are going to do is they're going to invade, or they're going to start trying to just destroy the Moldovan navy, which is situated right here. So they're going to try and basically go around all of Crimea and land here where they can destroy the Moldovan navy, and there's already a lot of air raid attacks being done here, so it's going pretty well for the red team, and there's probably not going to be any competition. Oh no. The two Anatolian nations will join in on this war, and yeah, this is definitely going to shake things up, because now the red team hasn't just got they don't have to just rely on other countries, or they don't have to just invade one area up here. They actually have fighting directly on their border now. And the Anatolian countries, they were planning to do this anyway, but it kind of got a bit delayed by the red team joining the war. I'd also like to say we are in the year 1980 now, so yeah, we're actually in May of 1980 at the minute. So yeah, that's cool, I guess. But now a big event. This place has been stalemated for years, and the Russians have finally been able to push past it and invade into the rest of Hungary. Well, Hungary will do a pretty big accomplishment, and that is make a siege on the old capital, where the actual capital is, and trying to fight against the militia a lot more, which is good for Hungary. We actually have the Swedish making an invasion down into this region, and eventually, after a big battle, Hungary will manage to recapture their capital. However, another weird thing, as Croatia will be able to recapture, or the militia will be able to capture the capital of Croatia. But the Lime team has just pulled off a magnificent thing, as they managed to cut this off here. And the Russians will also work over here to just kill this militia, as no one really likes it. Both sides kind of mutually agree that it's annoying as hell. So they're pushing into it and spearhead down to this major city here, and start to, invade into the Grey Militia. Now moving back down to Portugal, we have them quickly pushing back against Spain, doing extremely well, even getting close to where their capital city is, which would be a huge accomplishment to capture that. And they just kind of want to do this, and eventually after the war do this. And as we can see over here, they are doing extremely well with their navy as well, and they are able to completely eliminate the Spanish navy, a huge accomplishment. And now naval landings all across the land of this country. They'll capture this peninsula. But the Dark Red Union, the superhero, will come to save the day, and they'll start invading down here. How this is going to cost them up in the north, as the Swedish will be able to fully push them out of Germany once again. And yeah, the Swedish are definitely doing very good. Moving over to East Asia, we have a pretty interesting event happening in the middle of this war, and that is that these two countries will joining on the side of Sweden, but they're not really they're not really going to try and fight, because they can't really. But the Japanese country and the Korean country will just kind of observe and send supplies to Sweden whenever they basically can. Now coming back down to Colombia, we have the Yellow Mexicans completely just pushing them out, all of this land, just take them out like that. And with the final major city falling, we have this country just completely surrendering and capitulating over to Brazil and I guess the rest of the Star Alliance. And yeah, that's basically the South American front lost for these guys, as Peru will start to get invaded now, and it looks not good. And yeah, you definitely would say that Sweden is winning this war so far, since the Dark Red Union just hasn't been able to eliminate any of their allies yet. Or is that so? As now we come over to Florida, the people... No. So now we come up... Or is that so? As we come over to California now, The people in California aren't happy with this kind of corporatized, like kind of group of people ruling over the government. And what's going to happen is a large portion of this country will be breaking away to try and form the People's Republic of California. As you have these regions of the country officially breaking away from the government, and they'll start marching up into California to try and destroy the cartel once and for all. And the cartel wasn't really ready to actually see fighting in their own territory, so when it happens, they are really just flabbergasted. And the Canadian Union will basically just be like, okay, we're out of here, we're just going to push back over in this region. And they'll just decide to be like, okay, we're going to occupy this land, and you guys just figure out what you're going to do with this country. And what they're going to do is completely dismantle and just remove any trace of the old government, and replace it with a new democratic government, as we see California start to get invaded in all sides. As the rebellion will start to close in on the capital areas where the main leader of the cartel is located, and eventually he will be found and he will be taken and he'll be killed. So now we officially see an end of the cartel in California, and they now have a democracy. But we have the Anatolians now in the Anatolian Peninsula invading into the red team. This is not very good. We even see them making access or connection back with the Mediterranean Sea for the first time since before the Anatolian Wars. And we could just show how unprepared the red team was for this war. I mean, they were prepared for the war, but they weren't prepared to fight against Anatolia. So when it finally happens, let's just say that they are less than thrilled to have to deal with this country, who is a top 10 power, as they'll start to lose a lot of their naval battles in this region. And they could definitely hold their own against Anatolia, but with all of the support coming from Romania, Ukraine, and Russia, and Sweden, it's a lot harder for these guys to do anything. However, up in Ukraine, they are able to push quickly into this region. But the red team's navy will now completely encircle all this Crimean land, and yes, they'll eventually take over where the navy is situated in Moldova, and all this land will be taken back by the red team, who then officially will make a landing back in Ukraine, liberating the country from Moldova and the Russians. But anyway, over here we have the Hungarians pushing back and eliminating the sort of militia, and this thing will be pushed back to this region now, and it'll be fully kicked out of Hungarian territory completely, except for in this northern region here, which is going to do a kind of weird thing, and that is merge with Sweden, which that's strange. This region that's occupying the capital currently will also be eliminated, and this final region will yet again be fully eliminated, and the militia will be killed. Good riddance, no one liked that thing. But Sweden will invade into Hungary now with a huge amount of their forces. Like I said before, they only really have to deal with over here, so there's not much to really care about. Now coming back down to Iberia, we officially have the Portuguese capturing the capital of Spain. They'll also come up the coast now, get to here, and they'll start following along this river, capturing all these cities. And the Dark Red Union is just gonna have to be like, okay, fine, well, I guess we'll occupy you, this northern region, just try and reproduce you. What? No! And now the Spanish will officially lose all this region, and they'll have to hang on to where they're prevalent in the Dark Red Union region. However, they're gonna get pushed back. But the Dark Red Union may have just paid someone off, as we have a Galician rebellion up here breaking away from Portugal. Weird, really weird. And they may be trying to get the attention of one country to join this war, who could definitely eliminate Portugal once and for all, which is definitely one of the Dark Red Union's wet dreams right now. We also have the Anatolian country around here, capturing this land from the red team, and we also see them kind of making a way around this coast here, where the red team will officially be able to fight back up in the north and push back against Anatolia to the border, and they're not actually going to invade into actual Anatolian territory, because they're basically saying, hey, we kind of want to compromise with these guys, we just don't want to invade their territory if they would leave the war. The red team really isn't interested in fighting two Anatolian countries right now, so they're basically just going to kind of try and, not help them, but try and get them to leave the war. Anyway, coming here, we actually have the Swedish in the kind of islands up here, starting to invade back into the waters of Wales. However, Wales at this point has reached a stage where they are very unstable, and these rebellions are now happening, these protests are starting to happen all over the country now, and we officially see the return of an old union, as British Union nationalists will rebel away from Wales. Now obviously the British Union isn't like a ethnicity or a race or anything. No, the British Union is simply a country that some people like, so people want it to come back. But now with a kind of new democratic government, as the Welsh government will start to kind of be overthrown, and we have all of Devon or Cornwall going back, and Cardiff, or the capital of Wales, will be captured. Also have a connection up here to the Yorkshirean land, and eventually all of Wales will be captured, and Scotland will go over to this new British Union. Ireland will just be like, we're just trying to stay out of this thing, alright, this is not our business. And after a lot of paperwork, On the 25th of August 1951, on the 25th of August 1981, the British Union will officially be recognised by the Dark Red Union and kind of declared like a sovereign state in the middle of the war. Anyway, coming over here, we have the Floridians getting pushed back. The Canadian units are finally starting to get their SHIT together. However, something quite interesting will happen in this South American region, as Mexican ships will start to attack Floridian ships, and then Floridian troops will start to invade into regions of Colombia. That's another weird thing to happen. What's exactly going on? And then a day later, the Mexicans will just leave the Star Alliance, like what? And then we officially have a democratic government being put in place, and the Mexican country will officially then declare war on the Star Alliance. So let's give a bit of background here. The Mexican king was found dead in his palace for some reason. The Mexican king was actually found dead in his bedroom. He oofed himself. That's because he had a really bad kind of defect that he was born with at birth, and he was also really depressed at the same time. He was a good military general though, but unfortunately he didn't make it properly. What basically happened then is there'll kind of be like a democratic coup-ish thing that'll happen in the capital, and a new democratic leader will be put in place who is very much in support of the Dark Red Union and not in support of Sweden. So in a very lucky move for the Dark Red Union, we have the Mexican country being added into the square. What they're also going to do is release Colombia, which I don't think this is the same colour as Colombia, but you're just going to have to deal with it. It's close enough. And they'll start pushing back against the Floridians in this region. So yeah, pretty weird. And the Floridians are going to be like, what is going on at this point? And eventually they'll start doing a little bit of this, which is not very good. And the Mexicans don't like that, so how are they going to respond? By doing a boom boom, another boom boom, and finally one last boom boom. The Mexicans have just hit the capital city of Florida, their biggest military base down here in Texas, and also their base of naval operations down in this Carolinian area. They used 3 of the nukes in the territory, so they'll have none. They also had 2 that they made themselves, and there was 1 given by the Swedish. They are going to dock the Swedish down by 1 single nuke. And yeah, 1 bomb will be lost in this war from Sweden. Both sides have just lost 1 bomb so far, that's mental. But this is going to badly hurt the what's it called again? This is going to badly hurt the Floridians, and they're going to get pushed like nearly fully out of the Canadian Union, and Mexico will just single-handedly just mess this war fully up for the Floridians, as they'll then start moving into the country, and there's going to be some rebellions as well, as the Floridians will push up here, and the Texas country will start to rebel in the southern areas down here. And yeah, the American front is starting to look a lot less one-sided at this point. Now we're finally coming back to the South African front, which I kind of forgot existed, but the orange team has done magnificent work against the gold team, and they managed to fully push them out of their territory like this, and even push like this. Eventually they'll come down and capture the capital, which the country will basically just surrender. And this is going to make South Africa like, oh god, because now they're getting invaded themselves, and they're like, Up in the north, the Tanzanians have also been pushed back as well, and the Tanzanians at this rate are going to be like, okay, why are we even in this war? South Africa's also going to be like, okay, why are we even in this war as well? And kind of what's going to happen is a really boring ending, but the Cross Alliance is just going to decide to leave this war, and yes, it's just not good, is it? Like, it's really bad. And they say that I guess the Square Alliance will say that they'll receive minimal punishment in the peace treaty. But over here in Iberia now, we see an event for the Dark Red Union that they're really going to like, as the Moroccans will finally decide to join in on the Square Alliance, and they'll immediately start an invasion into Portugal. Coming up and start an invasion, their military is a lot better, and also their navy is a lot better than Portugal's. They are probably like the 6th or 7th strongest country in the world. They'll also start kind of re-invading into areas of the Spanish, and the Spanish will sort of be resurrected down here. In terms of this rebellion in the north, they'll also start to push down. And Iberia seems to be falling apart for the Portuguese, as now Dark Red Union troops will start to flood in, kind of giving up about the front up north. And yeah, they're going to start to, they'll recapture all of Catalonia and start an invasion back into the Portuguese occupied lands in Iberia. Coming up to Germany now, we also have the Dark Red Union sort of pushing back against Sweden, but it doesn't go as well this time, and they manage to get pushed back in, even recapturing this major city, and they'll capture another one now. And it's here where we see what is known as the Great Swedish March. The Swedish will simply not be stopped by any divisions that the Dark Red Union shows, and the Dark Red Union is pushed in further than they have ever been pushed in this war before. They are pushed in further than they've been pushed in this war before in this war. I can't speak. But the Swedish are going to push the navy back over here, and even start to get into some of the core areas of the Dutch lands of the Dark Union. And the Swedish will start to do many naval landings across the Dutch coast. And yes, oh god, oh no, they're getting really close to the capital. And will they? Find out in the next episode. Nah, just kidding. What I'm not kidding about is down here, as the Swedish will get pushed out of Hungary due to them kind of more focusing on the Dark Union, and they'll be just pushed out of Hungary just like this up to this part. And the Hungarians will also start invading into Bavaria. It's the same thing with Lime, Italy as well. They will also start an invasion into Bulgaria or Bavaria. Even Switzerland will manage to capture the capital. But the Russians aren't stopping, as they'll start another invasion back into Hungary, and Sweden will basically just give them this entire front line down here to use to basically better themselves. And the Romanians will actually get pushed back down here by the Albanians, and the Hungarians will also work with the Albanians to kind of push them back. Anyway, back up here we have the red team fully pushing Anatolia out of their territory once again, and also they'll put out South Anatolia, and they won't invade anymore. They'll kind of just hold a big kind of like a lot of troops on this front line, and they'll send over to the capital of Anatolia saying, lead this war and face no punishments or repercussions. We'll see what they decide to do in a minute, but now we come to Crimea, as they're starting to get pushed back, and eventually their capital will be captured. And yes, they're back. But then a big event will happen, and these guys aren't necessarily a democracy. However, their king does support very democratic values at the minute, and they're one of the red team's biggest enemies. However, they will decide to join in this war. Yes, Caspia will join in on the war. And they don't like Sweden's influence over here, which is mainly why they're doing it. Not because they want to, oh my god, we're super democratic. No, they're just going to try and push back against Sweden's influence. We'll also start an invasion into Russia over here. And yeah, the Russians were not prepared at all for this. Caspia was actually quite a chill country in Russia. They were not really caring. They'll also slightly push into this Russian country as well, and start pushing up. And these guys have been like, well, why are we even in this war? However, Caspia is kind of kicking them too late now, and they're going to be like, oh, well, I guess we'll lose a bit of land, it doesn't really matter. We then eventually see the capital of Russia, or the Grey Russians, fall over to Caspia, and Ukraine will also start to be re-liberated, also in this area down here, and this is going a lot better for Ukraine. But the Russians now have to send troops to help out these guys over here. We have the Hungarians pushing back against them in their territory, also down against Pink Romania as well, who once they're basically pushed back to this area in their territory, they'll be like, yeah, sorry Sweden, but like, we're out. The Dark Union likes this because they'll basically say, hey, you'll face minimal punishment for joining this war. Same thing that they did with South Africa. But anyway, yeah, that's cool. Now we're going to move back down to South America, as the, Colombians and the Mexicans are going to work against Brazil to try and, well, push them out of their territory. And they're also going to fund some rebellions in Brazil, specifically in this Guyana area here. And long story short, all of this area gets recaptured by Colombia, and Peru will also push over in this region as well. And a new democratic government will rise up in the south of Brazil and to try and take over the entire country. And yeah, this is a big rebellion. And Brazil, while they were very kind of strong, they were never that stable. In Brazil, while they were rather strong, they were just never that stable, and it kind of resulted in them not doing very well when they came to war. And eventually, the new Brazilian government will be able to capture the capital of Brazil, and the Pink country will then push into Brazilian territory, recapturing all their old land. And eventually, the Colombians will also move into Brazilian territory, and the Guyanan rebellion will also push back as well. And finally, we have the full collapse of Brazil, as a new democratic government will be put in place. And yeah, moving back to North America, we can see that these guys aren't really playing around. They'll push back against Texas and now restart an invasion into the Mexicans, and even hit this region of the river here. However, the Canadian Union at this point has got a lot more support, even in these northern regions of the country that want to join up with the Canadian Union. That's mental. And they'll be able to do a very good campaign down the coast over here. And the Texan Rebellion, they're going to start up again. And yes, not good. No. All this region down here will be captured by the new Texan Rebellion, and they'll start to basically just move out into more Floridian areas. The Mexicans will then push up into Red Mexico and change the government of this country to, well, new democracy. And we have what looks like the fall of Florida, once the Puerto Ricans will actually join the war, and start to push back tremendously in these Floridian areas, as the Navy is completely outclassed in this region. And we also have this Jamaican island. Being captured by the Mexicans over here, just like that. And they will start to move up now, meeting up with the Puerto Ricans, who will also just completely batter against the Floridians, just like that. And eventually then we have a brand new kind of a Cuban rebellion right here. We'll move up to some of these islands. But the Canadian Union Navy is going to basically make a shoot down here, and they're going to land where the islands are, and they're going to basically take over all of the northern parts of the Bahamas. Why did the Canadian Union do that? Well, they're trying to get close to the capital of Florida, which it looks like it's in arm's reach at this point. And the northern parts of the country will start to fall very quickly in Florida, and eventually we have something happening. And there's a brand new Democratic rebellion in Florida, who supports the old Democratic government to come back, and the dictator, who will then be assassinated, and the entirety of the Floridian coast will fall over to the new rebellion. And eventually, once the Texans get back basically all of their historical kind of land over here, we have Florida surrendering over to the rebellion, and they have been knocked out of this war, and the democracies have won all of the Americas. This is a shocking turnaround, as in the start the Americas looked like it would be very quickly under the hands of the Stars. However, now obviously that's not the case, and we just have Europe to worry about now. So yeah, what's Sweden's reaction to this? Well, obviously they don't like it, but they'll also be like, so we don't have to worry about North America anymore, so we can solely focus on the Dark Red Union. And this is exactly what the Dark Red Union didn't want, because they're already doing really bad. So we now have the Swedish moving into the core metropolitan areas of the Dutch capital, going kind of along the border of this river and getting to where the sea is. They'll also invade and take over this city here and get very close and enclose in on the Dutch capital. They'll also go down this river as well, and the Dutch area of the Dark Red Union is going to start to get a huge famine in this capital area. There's a massive Swedish blockade, and it's kind of trying to force these guys to be squeezed in, and eventually they'll take it over. However, the Dark Red Union isn't giving up, and instead what they'll do is start to push into this country, or this German country here, and even capture the capital of it, in which they'll finally restart an invasion into Germany. And eventually they will actually start to push back in this Swedish area that's owned by, that is Sweden occupying, and they'll try and do a spearhead to cut this area off and kind of do another encirclement on the encirclement. So yeah, very encirclement here. Coming back down to Portugal, we officially have the Portuguese Empire officially dying. The Spanish will very quickly be able to take back a lot, and I mean, a lot of the lands that they used to own, or basically everything, and push back the Portuguese all the way to their border. And eventually their troops will prove to be better, as they'll push into Portugal and capture many major cities in a very rapid pace. This only takes about 6 months to do, just how falling apart Portugal is, and their capital will be taken. And eventually the Portuguese, or what's left of it, will surrender over to the democratic forces, and Portugal has officially been liberated. Morocco will also kind of pointlessly move out into these islands over here, but they basically want to make sure that there's no trace left of Portugal anywhere, because I mean, to be fair, I would say Morocco doesn't really care about the square, they don't care about democracy. All they don't like is Portugal. They came to Portugal, they were colonised by Portugal. So that's one thing I like to mention. The Dark Red Union will start some Polish revolts actually over here in the Swedish occupied lands, which is a good thing for them to do. And down here, the Ukrainians are having a much better time against these guys now. Obviously, red team in the war with no distractions, and they managed to push back against the Russians over here, which the Russians are basically just gonna completely leave this territory. And the Moldovans now are oh no, because their waters are now completely occupied by the red team. They will then make a landing right here and take the capital of Moldova. They'll then imprison the king, and what's basically going to happen? What even are they? Yeah, they'll imprison the king, and we'll have this whole region here basically surrender over to Ukraine and rejoin. Leaving this part right here to be defended by Russia, and Russia will now officially have to invade Ukraine. It's now basically Russia versus Ukraine, just like the old times of this series. The Russians, they have a pretty good military. I mean, they were, like I said in the last video, they were kind of the Russian Empire, and the military hasn't really decreased. They weren't really given any sanctions because they were on the winning side of the war. However, they did technically lose the war, and they didn't really have any obligations to shrink their military because they were on the winning side. However, they did technically lose the war, so it was a two-way kind of thing. So they've been able to keep a pretty large military. However, over in Hungary, this area is just too far away to kind of healthily sustain, so they're going to have to basically give it up for the Hungarian. Will then help to re-liberate the Polish by pushing back against Berlin, and also in this Sweden-occupied land right here. However, there's one thing that the Swedish didn't really account for, and that's the fact that the Canadian Union does own Greenland, and what's basically going to happen is they're going to be able to meet up with the waters of Sweden and start invading around Iceland, and they fully take and get naval dominance over Iceland. Yowie and Sweden, they're too caught up in other things to really care, so they're just going to let them have this one, and Iceland will be taken. And this is the first actual bit of Swedish land that's been invaded during this war, which is mental. And in Sweden now, like a few areas that used to possibly be a country might be starting to get a little bit rowdy, and yeah. And actually over here, the Grey Russian country will also get completely beaten back by the Caspians, who, like I said, they're showing a lot more signs of democracy at this point. They have a very democratic king who is in support of it, and he's trying to switch the country into a constitutional monarchy. They're also pretty much meet up with this river again, so yeah. And actually the Russians will basically just decide to merge this country with them, as well as this one up here, so they can fight back a lot better against Caspia, which a pretty much like valuable land of Russian Empire country is, it probably could beat Caspia. I mean, you could definitely still like Caspia, but yeah, Russia is technically back against the Russian Empire. We also have the Russians pushing more and basically gaining full dominance across this entire front, and pushing back against the Caspians down here. And yeah, this war is very messy. Yeah, very, very messy war. But yeah, now going back to what has been the least moved front, but also the most kind of important front of this war so far, as the Dark Red Union it may or may not be having success. You'll have to see. As the capital right here is eventually sieged, and with this happening in World War II, it wasn't very good for the Dutch country. However, they did manage to rebound. This time, it may not be able to. However, a really good military in the Dark Red Union, or a really good military general in the Dark Red Union, will be able to repel this, and his name is Dominic Ishton. Yes, the same guy that managed to stop the nuclear crisis about 20 years earlier is now here to stop the Dark Red Union from officially falling, and he will defend his capital, pushing back against the Swedish forces and regaining the city as well. And this guy is one of the best generals the Dark Red Union has ever seen. Some people even say he's up there on levels with Akari the Great back in the Anatolian times. But also fully get this land out here, and you can see that the Swedish are kind of encircled over here now, and the Dark Red Union Navy is also pushing back after this disastrous campaign like that. Sweden will also kind of start to lose over Poland. However, they'll basically just let this land go, saying we don't care. But they made a massive mistake, because now that's just letting the Berlin country get pushed back, and this city is taken. But never fear, the Russians are here, as they will now start an invasion into Poland. The Russians have really just been the MVP of the Starlights in this war. Like, look at how good they've done. We also see over here that the these two countries here, they'll decide to basically just leave the war, because like there's no point. And yeah, and what the Dark Red Union is at this point is trying to basically encourage the AEU to join this war. However, they don't want to, because this isn't their war. This is your war. But well, after this, they kind of like, well, maybe we could try and influence some of the individual members to do so. Will they be able to? You'll see in a few minutes. Coming back over here, the Dark Red Union, now rejuvenated and remoralized, they'll be able to go over here. The Dark Red Union has a lot more morale now in their military. They're a lot more confident in this war, and they'll show as they just basically fully take out this German country right here. And it'll basically start to be occupied by Sweden, similar to how the Dark Red Union did to Spain earlier in the war. But the Polish will also be able to push back against the Berlins. However, this is kind of a they're very back and forth. But they will also be able to push back against the Russians over here due to a logistical issue that the Russians faced, and they'll also start their own push now into Prussia, which is their core land. The Ukrainians will start to receive tens, or about like hundreds of thousands of Red Team troops, population. But the Dark Red Union has managed to pull off some amazing results. As countries in the AEU will start to join this war to help democracy, you know, they're already sort of winning, but they could help them win even better. Also forgot to change Anatolia, yeah, they left the war. But India will decide to join in on this war. This is a huge one. They have the second most amount of population in the world, and yeah, that's which is a really good result. Also, Indonesia joining, they are probably a top 20 power, so that's a good one. Also, this Australian country over here, so yeah, this is technically is now a world war with Oceania involved. Also Persia joining in on this war, so the OG trio, I guess, well, I mean, Egypt is on it, but these OG trio over here, when they will be in the middle, yes, they're all in on this war. China, a really big one, will join in this war. We also have the Philippines joining in, which is another big one. And finally, Shandong, who is the leader of this alliance, they are the 4th strongest country in the world, I believe. They will all join in on this war in preserving democracy. And you may say at this point, Sweden should surrender, but they decide to not surrender and instead they'll fight to the end. We're now with, like, basically infinite amount of troops with Shandong. I mean, the most populated country in the world. They have over 1 billion population. These guys will start to do a lot better against Russia, pushing them almost fully out of their country. And yes, that AU thing was huge for the Dark Red Union. They'll also be pushed back over here, and Russia is fully pushed out of Ukraine. And then Ukraine will finally start to invade back into Russia, doing a much better job against the, well, I guess, empire, not really, former. We then have the Caspian kind of shooting up here, and managed to get up to the capital of where the old Saiyan country was. And Russia is definitely fumbling this one, as the Ukrainians will actually send lots of boats across this river to get up to very near to where the capital is, and they'll start to approach it. Also starting more kind of invasions over here, as like millions of troops now will start to spill into Ukraine and thus into Russia as well. And eventually, for the first time since World War II, the Russian capital will be captured by the Ukrainians. A huge event in this war, and now all 3 capitals of Russia have actually been captured. Don't worry, so they'll just decide to relocate to this area of Estonia. Actually, no, that's kind of like more Latvia, I'd say. Well, that's, I don't know, it's kind of Russian. But with this, the Russian army is going to do a lot worse in these Polish areas, and we're starting to see the Russian army get a lot more demoralised, and eventually they'll be fully pushed out of Prussia. Also have the Hungarians, who have had an incredible comeback in this war. They got really slapped around at the start, but now they're having a really good comeback. They'll start pushing back against Russia and nearly completely push them out of their territory. As the Ukrainians will only continue to thicken their front line along here, and the current monarch in Russia, who is, I'd say, probably related to the old royal family before World War II, is very unpopular in the minute. He's one of the most unpopular ones they've ever had. He's the 2nd most unpopular monarch. First was the one in World War II, the son that ruled, you know. And it's starting to get a lot worse by the minute. Over here we have the Dark Red Union, fully managing to take out every major city in this country, and eventually it will fully fall over to the Dark Red Union. The Dark Red Union will also occupy this land of this German country here, yeah. And now Dark Red Union has probably about, like, I'd say maybe 8 million, maybe 10 million troops on their front line. This is one of the biggest front lines ever, and it's going to be one of the biggest pushbacks ever, because they have ones from countries like the Canadian Union, they have China, all over here, India. Take a look at the population layer. Yeah, the darker red means they're more populated. You can see these guys have a lot of populations, and they also have a huge military. So now we have the Dark Red Union managing to fully push Sweden out of their Dutch lands over here, and eventually push back like this. This march is known as the March of Democracies, as they will start to push back fully, or Sweden fully out of their territory, and march straight into the Swedish land, just like that. Eventually we have the Lime team starting more invading this country, this Bavarian one. Hungary will also do the exact same thing, invading very far up, taking all of this land eventually. Then Dark Red Union will take over the rest. Now, by the day, the Russian monarch is becoming more and more unpopular, which is leading to Russia really starting to lose a lot of land. And eventually there will be what is known as the Second Russian Revolution, which last time was one revolution, so this is the Russian Revolution, but a brand new democratic Russian state will try and rise, and yeah, it'll manage to consolidate all of Russia, and Russia will officially leave. And Russia will officially leave the war. Now it's simply Sweden and this Prussian country down here versus the entire democratic world, basically. Sweden is getting a request from these guys to surrender and face minimal losses in this war. However, you will have your government change obviously to democracy. Sweden though will respond with a flat no, saying they'd rather fight out to the end than surrender to the purely democracies. So let's let the final battle begin. New Russian country will actually start to invade into Sweden in these areas, in which they will blitz into it, and will then start an invasion into the Russian country, pushing fully around the Balkans or the Baltic Sea. And now a mass amount of the population in Sweden is being conscripted, basically everyone of the legal age, which is standing at 16 at the minute, and they'll be able to push into this region of Estonia here. However, they're using a lot of people from Latvia, which, if you remember back to a few episodes ago, there was a country here, or Latvia, and they're coming back. The Latvians will return to this series and rebel away fully from Sweden, taking all of the land that they used to own. The democratic Russians will also be able to push back against the Swedish over here, and the Bros have been reunited, Poland and Latvia. We'll have all this Estonian land being lost, and an old country will be coming back. I know exactly who will be happy about this, but Finland will return over here. The Finnish will officially rebel. A new democratic Finland, I don't even know if they've done that before, but a new democratic Finland will be formed over here in this Finnish area. Democratic Russia will also start to push back against the Swedish over here, managing to fully push them out of these islands. And actually the Dark Red Union Navy will surpass Sweden as its strength once again, and start to push fully in this area and really consolidate it. And they'll basically just fully blockade Norway off over here. They'll manage to capture these like British Scandinavian island areas right here, and a new rebellion will be starting up inside of Sweden, as the Norwegians will rebel away from Sweden. Fueled by their history, the country that hasn't been around for thousands of years at this point will finally return to the series, as they will fully kind of follow this river in this frontline area and push up further into the Norwegian land. We'll also have the Dark Red Union fully pushing the Swedish out of Germany in a matter of weeks at this point, in a matter of about 2 months, and then officially they will make landing in or they'll start invading into the Danish areas. The Berlin country will also be invaded by the Dark Red Union, and they'll be taken out, and with no hope they will also surrender. Now it's officially Sweden on their own, and it's pretty sad to just watch at this point, as the Dark Red Union will start to advance up the Danish peninsula, pushing up and grabbing every single major city over just like that. However, they're not able to pass onto the Danish islands, but a new rebellion now is actually going to start, as we have, I guess, the northern Scandinavian group breaking away from Sweden, and we have the Finnish and the Democratic Russians basically sharing the rest of the country. Democratic Russians will also be capturing these islands, and officially the Dark Red Union will make a landing in here and to Copenhagen. And yes, the final battle will begin. The capital, or the battle of the Swedish capital. Around 270,000 casualties will take place in this battle, but eventually the Dark Red Union will make landfall, and a siege that lasts about 3 months. Eventually the Swedish capital will fall to the Dark Red Union, and the king will actually manage to escape to up here where Stockholm is. The Dark Red Union will move their navy to come out and capture this island now, and yeah, it's just a game of, I guess, cat and mouse at this point, like an old thing. They'll also make a landing down here and start to take a lot more land in Sweden, trying to push up to where the king is located over in Stockholm. While they're at it, they'll also capture a lot more of these Swedish cities down here and liberate the Swedish, liberate with quotation mark. And we also see the Norwegians push up, and I'll show you what they kind of end up looking like, as they'll start to occupy all this land now, and no one will bother to covering these islands. Eventually all of this kind of northern land here will surrender over to the Dark Red Union, and a new landing is made here. The king in the second Metropolis city though, is right here, and eventually on July 31st, 1984, the Swedish king will be arrested and Sweden will officially surrender. And now the biggest war in human history, with the most casualties in human history, has officially ended, and democracy will be brought to the world at this point. And the Swedish Empire and their allies, the Star Alliance, have been defeated by the Democrats, or the democracies. I really enjoyed this war. I think it was probably my best war yet, I'd say. I think this beats World War II, this beats World War One, and yeah, I want to know what you guys think in the comments, because I mean, I know I'm making the good guys win this war, but trust me, this is gonna make a better kind of scenario than what Sweden won. But anyway, let's stop edging you guys and let's get on to the peace treaty. So this is one final look at the pre-war Cold War map. Give it a really big look, because this is going to change a lot, and yeah, let's see what it ends up looking like. And this is what it looks like after. As you can see, a lot of stuff has changed, and that's certainly America's, where the Canadian Union is now massive. They have a huge chunk of North America now, and they are probably up there with one of the strongest countries in the world. They take 2 provinces off here from California, and also somewhere away from Florida. Going a bit further down, we actually see the Mexican country gains over Jamaica, and the Canadian Union, weirdly enough, gains these northern Bahamian islands, so they have their own Hawaii, I guess, at this point. Cuba will also be getting their independence, as well as Puerto Rico gaining half of the island of Hispaniola. However, the other half didn't want to join up with Puerto Rico again, because they kind of split away from the sort of, I guess, values when they were part of Florida. So we have the country of Haiti now getting their independence. Coming a bit further down, we see Peru gets all the land that they once lost. Brazil is also heavily nerfed. They lose a lot of their land that they used to have right here. I mean, they lose Guyana, and they don't actually lose all of this land because most up here was actually very part of Brazil, and this region also should have been part of Brazil originally, but just wasn't. So yeah, Brazil is quite nerfed. They are nowhere near as strong as they used to be, and yeah, they're just nerfed. Over in Europe, we can see that the Portuguese unfortunately no longer exist. They were just seen as too dangerous to keep alive. Just, you know, they've been in like 3 world wars at this point, and they've done some bad stuff. The Orange team will gain 1 province actually from the Gold team in Africa. Other than that, nothing else changes. The Congo will actually be gaining this island away from Sweden down here. Come back up to Europe, the British Union actually comes back. This is a pretty weird event considering that they were not, I mean, they weren't banned from existing really, but the old government was banned from existing, but they are technically back now with the same kind of culture, the same, you know, values, but I mean not the same values because they're not focused on any colonisation or anything else, but they are basically back. The British Union is back, you could say. Ireland will also gain a tiny bit of land from Scotland here. I'm not sure what they're really going to do with it, but they get it. Iceland will also be given their independence away from Sweden because, well, why not? Also going back down to Iberia, we have this Galician country getting their independence. Morocco will gain a little bit of land down here. And the weird thing that happens is that the Spanish will gain these islands, but Italy will actually gain this one, and Spain isn't the biggest fan of this, but they're just going to have to roll with it. Going back up here, the former white country that was here before was divided between Switzerland and the Italian country, and Switzerland is a lot more Swiss now. They look a lot more similar to Switzerland. Coming over to Croatia, they lose a few provinces. I think they lose about 1 or 2 to Hungary, and they lose a few over to Italy. Their government has also changed. Romania will lose also a few provinces. Well, it's nothing too noteworthy really. I mean, it's not that big. Over Ukraine, they gain back all of Moldova. They gain back the provinces they lost from Russia originally. And they also gain 1 province from Grey Russia over here. So Ukraine is big. I'm not sure if they're in their prime because they used to have a lot more kind of Caucasian land going like this, but they are definitely doing a lot better than they were before. And you can say Ukraine is back on the rise again. Going back here, Russia is reduced to how they were just after World War II. They also gain this land that Sweden used to have, they get it back. However, they will keep this region of Estonia here as a democratic Russia country did invade it in the war. I should probably have the ideologies on now. I'm actually gonna, yeah, a lot more countries were turned into democracies after this war. We see Caspia gains a few provinces from this country, and actually I'm going to go back to the ideology later. As about a month after this war, the king makes it official that this country will turn into a constitutional monarchy. And also I'm going to say in Russia we could pretty much see a Russian Union probably forming soon. But you'll have to see, or wait and see whether that happens or not. And now come out to probably the most changed region of this war. We come up to the Baltic Sea/Nordic area. First we see Denmark will get their independence. However, they aren't the most stable country at the minute. They may have to let a bit of their country go in a few years because I mean, they're a new country and they're also like a mix between Swedish and Germanic people, which isn't always good. With most of the Germanic people living in the south and the most Nordic people living in the north. I know Sweden does technically come from Germany, but they have pretty much like left the German ethnicity by now. Coming around here, we see that Poland will gain all of Prussia back, and I do believe they gained something from Berlin. I might be wrong though. Latvia will also return, and I know who's very happy about this right now. But Finland is back, and they are the biggest they've been since they were first invaded, like thousands of years ago. We also have this northern Scandinavian country here. I guess you could call this the northern Swedish country or the Lapland country. They officially also get their independence. Coming over here, we have the Norwegians also getting their independence away from Sweden. And I don't like this border, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to give 1 extra province over to the Norwegian country. I don't think I did a great job with this peace treaty, if I'm honest. Like, some of the things I think are okay, but it's not like the World War II peace treaty that I really like. I think that looks miles better, not gonna lie. But Sweden will be coming back. They were staying, but they are now a democracy, and the government has been changed. The old monarch is exiled to this city over here in Russia. The old monarch is exiled over here to Gotland, and the new democratic government is very strong in Sweden, and it's definitely one of the strongest democratic governments. Kind of like what happened with Germany after World War II. I know I say Germany after World War II a lot, but that's in this timeline, not real life. The Dark Union also does gain 1 province here, and this German country is kind of a bit squashed. I don't like their border again, so I'm actually just going to give 1 more province back to this country because I just didn't like how they looked, but they do look a lot better now. And I believe that's everything that happened in the war. Well, actually, no, coming down to Antarctica, we see the Brazilian region get split up between the Darker Union and the Red Team. And it's not too, bad. I mean, they still get to keep a little bit of land in Antarctica, but a majority of their colony is, well, not colony, but a majority of their land in Antarctica is divided up. So, not too big of a deal, but it happened. And I believe that is fully it for this war. This was definitely the biggest war in this time so far. It's probably my favourite. I just liked how stuff was happening everywhere. In the Americas before there was lots of colonies, so you couldn't really do many countries fighting. But now we have all these countries here, and yeah, it was definitely a lot. It was a lot more liked by me than the other wars in the series. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. I'll see you in the next one, which is episode 50. Wow, that'll definitely be premiering as well. But anyway, I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.